Chapter 1. Foundation of Glass. Wade Blackwood stood in front of Boston's most prestigious courthouse, straightening his tie as a cool autumn breeze rustled the maple trees. At 35, he had already made partner at Winters & Reed, specializing in intellectual property law. His reputation was built on meticulous preparation and an almost preternatural ability to anticipate his opponent's moves. "You ready to destroy some more dreams today?" Dominic "Dom" Santiago grinned, handing Wade a coffee. Wade smiled. Dom was his oldest friend, a digital security consultant with a questionable past whom Wade had defended years ago on hacking charges. Where Wade was methodical and reserved, Dom was impulsive and gregarious, but their loyalty to each other was unshakable. "It's not about destroying dreams, Dom. It's about protecting them," Wade replied, checking his watch. "I should get inside. Belle's meeting me for lunch after I wrap up." Wade's thoughts drifted to his wife as he climbed the courthouse steps. Belinda Belle Blackwood had crashed into his life 3 years ago at a charity fundraiser where he was representing a nonprofit art collective pro bono. With her magnetic personality and keen business instincts, Belle had been building her lifestyle brand, Belle's World, on social media, amassing a respectable following of 200,000 devoted fans. "Mr. Blackwood," Judge Howard Kessler called out, descending the steps. At 70, Kessler was a legal institution in Massachusetts with a silver mane and penetrating eyes. He had taken Wade under his wing early in his career, becoming the father figure Wade never had. "How's my favorite attorney this morning?" "Ready for battle, Your Honor," Wade replied with respect. "Still coming over for dinner Sunday?" "Mary Ann's making her pot roast." "Wouldn't miss it," Wade promised. The Kesslers had practically adopted him after his parents' deaths when he was in law school. Inside the courtroom, Wade expertly dismantled the opposition's case, a tech company trying to steal a small developer's innovative algorithm. By noon, he had secured not just a victory, but a substantial settlement for his client. At Yvette's, an upscale bistro near the harbor, Wade watched Belle charm the waiter with her radiant smile. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves, and her green eyes sparkled as she documented their lunch for her followers. Their contrasting personalities had drawn them together, his calculated precision balanced by her spontaneous energy. "To my brilliant husband," Belle raised her champagne flute. 3 years of marriage today, and I fall more in love with your beautiful mind every day." Wade smiled, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Remember our wedding day? That little bed and breakfast in Vermont? How could I forget? The flowers, the snow, that adorable justice of the peace with the bow tie." Belle's expression softened. "And the way you looked at me during our vows." Their wedding had been intimate, just 30 guests in a historic and surrounded by snow-covered mountains. Wade had surprised Belle by having her favorite author officiate the ceremony. The wedding video, masterfully shot by an award-winning documentarian, had captured every perfect moment. "I have something for you," Wade said, sliding a small blue box across the table. Belle gasped at the vintage emerald earrings inside. "Wade, these are exquisite. They reminded me of your eyes," he said simply, as they walked back to their brownstone in Beacon Hill, a historical gem they'd spent 2 years restoring together. Wade felt a contentment he never thought possible. Their home represented their partnership. Wade's attention to historical accuracy combined with Belle's flair for modern comfort. That evening, Wade worked in his home office while Belle prepared for a photo shoot the next day. He'd helped her negotiate advantageous contracts with sponsors, drawing on his legal expertise to protect her growing brand. Her recent partnerships with luxury skincare and home goods companies had nearly tripled her income. Wade's phone buzzed with a text from his paralegal, Layla Jackson. "Need your eyes on the Whitman contract ASAP. Client anxious." He sighed and called out to Belle, "I need to review this contract tonight. Rain check on the movie." When no answer came, he walked to their bedroom and found Belle intently typing on her phone, startling when she noticed him. "Sorry, work stuff," she said quickly, putting her phone face down. "You need to work?" "No problem. I'm exhausted anyway." As Wade returned to his office, a strange feeling settled in his stomach. Belle had been increasingly distracted lately, canceling plans, taking calls in other rooms, staying out late for networking events. He pushed the thoughts away, focusing on the contract instead. Later that night, Wade lay awake beside his sleeping wife, unable to shake the feeling that something about their perfect life was beginning to fracture. Chapter 2. Beneath the Surface. Over the next 3 months, Wade cataloged the changes in Belle's behavior with the same precision he applied to legal briefs. Late-night emergency meetings with sponsors, password changes on her accounts, defensive reactions to casual questions. She'd enrolled in a morning yoga class, but returned with hair inexplicably damp, as if she'd showered elsewhere. "You're acting like one of your paranoid clients," Dom said over lunch at their usual spot near Wade's office. "Belle's business is taking off. She's busy." "It's more than that," Wade insisted, showing Dom his phone. "Look at her credit card statement. 3 charges at Hotel Indigo in the last month, a hotel 3 blocks from our house." Dom's expression grew serious. "You think she's cheating?" "I think something's wrong," Wade replied carefully. "She's been asking Layla about my schedule, checking when I'll be in court or meeting clients." "Want to do some digging?" Dom offered hesitantly. Wade shook his head. "Not yet. I need more information." That afternoon, Wade's colleague Veronica Wu stopped by his office. Veronica was the firm's most aggressive litigator, with a reputation for brutal cross-examinations and an encyclopedic knowledge of precedent. "Saw your wife yesterday," she mentioned casually, leaning against his doorframe. "Oh, where?" Wade asked, maintaining his composure. "Bistro du jour. She was with Maxwell Harrington." Wade kept his expression neutral despite the knot forming in his stomach. Max Harrington was the flamboyant founder of Fresh Start Law, a divorce firm known for its aggressive tactics and splashy marketing. "Probably a business meeting." "Didn't look like business," Veronica said carefully. "Thought you should know." After Veronica left, Wade stared at his computer screen, the words blurring. A quick search brought up Max Harrington's website, featuring dramatic black and white photos of the attorney with slogans like "Your past doesn't define your future" and "Freedom begins with fresh start." Harrington, with his perfect smile and designer suits, looked more like a movie star than a lawyer. At a dinner party hosted by their friends at weekend, Wade noticed Belle tense when their mutual friend Amara Okafor mentioned seeing a tacky billboard for a divorce attorney. "Fresh Start Law." Amara rolled her eyes. "The guy looks like he belongs on a reality show." Belle quickly changed the subject, but later, Wade observed Amara watching Belle with a concerned expression. After the party, Wade approached Amara while Belle said her goodbyes to the other guests. "Is there something I should know about Belle?" he asked quietly. Amara hesitated. "It's probably nothing. I just saw her having lunch with someone a couple weeks ago. She didn't see me, and she seemed intimate with him." "Max Harrington?" Wade supplied. Amara's surprise confirmed his suspicion. "I'm sorry, Wade." The final confirmation came a week later. While Belle was at a photo shoot, Wade found their shared iPad had received iMessage notifications from an unknown number. The preview showed, "Miss you already. Can't wait to see you tonight when he's." Wade opened the message thread and felt the world collapse around him. Dozens of messages between Belle and Max, romantic, explicit, and worst of all, filled with mockery about Wade. "He's so clueless," Belle had written. "All I have to do is mention a work emergency, and he's back to his contracts." "Classic workaholic husband," Max replied. "Exactly the type we build our business on." Wade downloaded the entire conversation before deleting the messages from the device. Then he called Dom. "I need everything you can find on Maxwell Harrington." Chapter 3. Fracture Lines. 8 months, Wade said, his voice unnervingly calm as he faced Belle across their kitchen island. "You've been sleeping with him for 8 months. Belle's face drained of color. "Wade, I don't know what you're—" "Please don't insult my intelligence," Wade interrupted, sliding printouts of her messages with Max across the marble counter. "I know about the hotel rooms, the yoga classes, the plans you've been making." Belle's shock quickly transformed into defiance. "Fine. Yes. I've been seeing Max." "Why?" The simple question seemed to catch her off guard. "Because you haven't really seen me in years, Wade. You're married to your cases, to your precious reputation. I'm just an accessory, the pretty wife who makes partner look good." I built my schedule around your photo shoots. I reviewed all your contracts. I renovated this entire brownstone to your specifications. Wade countered, maintaining his composure. That's not emotional support. When was the last time you asked how I felt? When did you last look at me the way Max does? Wade's jaw tightened. And how does divorce attorney Maxwell Harrington look at you, Belle? Like I'm the most important person in his world, she shot back. Well, you've made your choice clear. Wade stood, straightening his tie in a gesture Belle had once found endearing. I'll be staying at Dom's for a few days while I find a place. Just like that? No fighting for our marriage. Belle looked genuinely surprised. Would that be genuine, or just another performance for your audience? Wade asked, picking up his packed overnight bag. You've been directing this ending for months. I'm just following the script. The divorce proceedings began 2 weeks later. Belle had retained Patricia Harlow, a divorce attorney known for securing substantial settlements for younger spouses in brief marriages. Wade chose to represent himself, a decision that raised eyebrows among his colleagues. You know what they say about a lawyer who represents himself, Judge Kessler warned during their weekly dinner. I have clarity now, Wade replied. No emotional fog. That's what worries me, the judge said. You're too calm. This isn't a business dissolution, son. Wade's composure was tested when he learned from Amara that Belle had been systematically rewriting their marriage history to friends and followers. She's telling everyone you were controlling, Amara explained over coffee. That you monitored her spending, isolated her from friends, criticized her constantly. She's building a narrative of escaping an emotionally abusive relationship. And people believe this? Wade asked incredulously. Some do. She's very convincing, and she has the platform. Amara hesitated. There's more. She and Max are already living together. They're not public yet, but they're planning something once the divorce is final. Something about Max's firm. During mediation, Belle's demands were extensive. Half the value of the brownstone, despite Wade having paid 90% of the costs, a portion of his partnership shares, and alimony based on their established lifestyle. Ms. Turner claims she sacrificed career opportunities to support your advancement, Patricia Harlow stated coolly. Interesting, Wade replied. Considering her income tripled during our marriage, largely due to contracts I negotiated for her. The proceedings grew increasingly acrimonious. Belle's team leaked selective details to gossip columns, painting Wade as cold and calculating. Meanwhile, Wade discovered through Dom that Belle and Max had discussed using his uptight image as a marketing contrast to Max's champion of freedom brand for Fresh Start Law. They're planning to leverage your divorce as a marketing strategy, Dom explained, showing Wade emails he'd recovered. Max sees Belle as both a partner and a poster child for his services. Against the advice of colleagues and Judge Kessler, Wade ultimately conceded to most of Belle's demands. You're letting her take you to the cleaners, Veronica protested. Why not fight? Because the longer this drags on, the more it affects my practice. My clients don't need their attorney's divorce splashed across social media, Wade explained. Sometimes the most strategic move is a tactical retreat. The divorce was finalized 4 months after Wade found the messages. Belle received a generous settlement, including a substantial cash payment in lieu of ongoing alimony. The terms required both parties to refrain from disparaging each other publicly. The day after the divorce was finalized, Belle posted a sunset photo with a caption, "As one chapter ends, an exciting new beginning awaits." Sometimes the bravest thing is to choose yourself. Hashtag fresh start, hashtag new beginnings. Wade closed the social media app and made a single call. Dom, I need everything you can find on both of them. And I mean everything. Chapter 4, the commercial. 6 months post-divorce, Wade had established a new rhythm. He had purchased a modern condo in South End, thrown himself into his practice, and begun mentoring law students through a program founded by Judge Kessler. To the outside world, he appeared to have moved on with quiet dignity. On a Tuesday morning in April, Wade was preparing for a meeting with Brunswick Technologies, a potential client that could significantly expand his practice's intellectual property portfolio. His phone began buzzing continuously with text notifications. Wade, are you seeing this? Veronica, call me ASAP. Have you seen the commercial? Dumb. This is beyond unprofessional. Absolutely disgusting. Judge Kessler. Frowning. Wade opened his laptop and searched Fresh Start Law commercial. The top result was a YouTube video already amassing thousands of views. The commercial opened with familiar footage, his and Belle's wedding day. The camera panned across the snow-covered Vermont landscape before cutting to Belle in her wedding dress, looking radiant. However, the editing had manipulated the timeline, inserting moments where Belle looked pensive or was taking a breath between smiles to make her appear unhappy or hesitant. Wade watched in stunned silence as the commercial continued. His own voice reciting vows played over footage that had been subtly altered to suggest discord. The color grading shifted from warm tones to cool, clinical blues as text appeared, trapped in a mistake. The final sequence showed Belle in the present day, laughing with Max Harrington in his law office as the tagline appeared. Some mistakes can be fixed. Fresh Start Law, begin again. Wade felt physically ill. Their most intimate moments, vows they had written together, the dance where he had whispered how she had saved him after his parents' deaths, the cake cutting where they had laughed until they cried, all recontextualized as a cautionary tale. His phone rang, Brunswick Technologies. With tremendous effort, Wade composed himself and took the call. Mr. Blackwood, we've been discussing your proposal, the CEO began awkwardly. In light of recent developments, we feel it might be best to postpone our decision. Recent developments? Wade kept his voice level. The commercial. We can't afford association with personal controversies. I'm sure you understand. By afternoon, the commercial had gone viral. Legal blogs were discussing the ethical implications, social media was generating memes, and 3 more potential clients had withdrawn interest. Belle's following had surged by thousands as people flocked to her profile for additional drama. Wade finally answered Dom's calls. This is actionable, Wade, Dom fumed. They didn't just use footage of you without consent. They manipulated it to defame you professionally. They'll claim it was Belle's property, Wade replied, and that it's protected as commercial speech. So, you're just going to take this? Dom demanded. I didn't say that. Wade's voice took on an edge Dom recognized from their youth. I'm going to handle this my way. Wade drove to Belle and Max's new residence, a luxury condo building downtown. The concierge, recognizing Wade from Belle's social media posts, reluctantly called up. In the opulent apartment, Belle lounged on a white sectional while Max fixed drinks at a built-in bar, both wearing matching smug expressions. Wade, what a surprise, Belle feigned shock. We thought you'd call first. Take it down, Wade said simply. The commercial? It's already airing on 3 local stations, Max replied, handing Belle a martini. Pretty good response rate so far. You manipulated private footage to deliberately damage my professional reputation, Wade stated. That's actionable on multiple grounds. Belle laughed. It's my wedding video too, Wade. Community property, remember? If you think the divorce settlement covered rights to my image and likeness, you received very poor legal advice, Wade replied, looking pointedly at Max. Look, it's just business. Max stepped forward, assuming a conciliatory tone that didn't reach his eyes. Nothing personal. You made it personal when you used my wedding day to promote your services. Wade's voice remained eerily calm. I'll only say this once. Take it down, issue a public apology, or I will respond appropriately. Max's patronizing smile widened. Is that a threat? Because threatening a fellow officer of the court. It's a professional courtesy, Wade interrupted. One I won't extend again. As he turned to leave, Belle called after him. If you were half as passionate during our marriage as you are about your precious reputation, we might still be together. Wade paused at the door. You know what the difference is between us, Belle? I actually meant those vows you're now selling to the highest bidder. Back in his condo, Wade methodically began making calls. First to Veronica Wu, requesting her expertise in intellectual property. Then to 3 former classmates, now practicing in relevant specialties. Finally to Dom. I need you to secure all digital communications between Belle, Max, and anyone at the production company that made the commercial, Wade instructed. Legally obtainable evidence only. What are you planning? Dom asked. They wanted to use my reputation to build their brand. Wade replied, staring at a freeze frame of the altered wedding video. Let's see how that works out for them. Chapter 5. The Architect. Over the next 3 weeks, Wade constructed his response with surgical precision. He began by locating Trent Collins, the documentary filmmaker who had shot their wedding. They told me it was for a personal social media retrospective, Trent explained in Wade's office, visibly upset. I never authorized commercial use. It violates my contract terms and devalues my artistic work. And you maintained copyright ownership? Veronica Wu confirmed, reviewing the original contract. Shared copyright with the couple, with express limitations on commercial exploitation without all parties' consent, Trent affirmed. I would never have agreed otherwise. Wade's next move was consulting Loretta Blackstone, a formidable media litigation attorney introduced to him by Judge Kessler. This is a textbook case of false light portrayal, Loretta stated, examining the commercial frame by frame in her downtown office overlooking the harbor. They've manipulated the timeline and context to create a fictional narrative about your marriage. Can we prove damages? Wade asked. With the Brunswick Technologies withdrawal alone, absolutely. But I suspect there's more impact to document. Wade nodded grimly. 4 other potential clients have backed out. 2 existing clients have expressed concerns about negative publicity. Meanwhile, Dom had discovered a troubling pattern in Max's practice. This isn't the first time he's done this, Dom explained, spreading files across Wade's dining table. I found 3 other cases where Max represented women divorcing their husbands, subsequently began relationships with them, and then leveraged those relationships in his marketing. Were any of them still clients when the relationships began? Wade asked sharply. At least one was, Dom confirmed. I've made contact with the ex-husbands. They're willing to share information. Wade also reconnected with Amara, meeting at a quiet cafe away from Belle's usual haunts. They're planning a reality show, Amara revealed, sliding across a prospectus she'd obtained through her work at a media company. Fresh starts, following Belle and Max as they build their life together while helping others escape toxic marriages. They're pitching it to streaming platforms. Using my wedding footage was just the opening move, Wade realized. Belle's been approached to write a memoir too, Amara added. She's been testing material on her close followers, stories about your controlling behavior, emotional distance. Some of it is, Wade, it's character assassination. Wade's most significant breakthrough came from Naomi Chun, a former associate at Fresh Start Law who had left under contentious circumstances. Max routinely encouraged clients to exaggerate claims of emotional abuse to secure better settlements. Naomi explained in Wade's office, nervously twisting a paperclip. He called it narrative enhancement. The commercial was his idea. He's been planning something like this since he met Belle. Would you testify to that? Loretta asked directly. Naomi hesitated. He has dirt on everyone who's worked for him. But she straightened her shoulders. Yes. This crossed the line. As Wade built his case, he maintained a public facade of dignified silence. He declined comment to legal blogs seeking his reaction and continued his practice with unwavering professionalism. This restraint only fueled public curiosity, with many legal observers noting that Blackwood's silence speaks volumes and may indicate something substantial in the works. By week 4, Wade had assembled a comprehensive legal strategy targeting multiple vulnerabilities in Belle and Max's actions. The cease and desist letter draft ran to 17 pages, meticulously documenting every potential violation from copyright infringement to tortious interference with business relationships. This is nuclear, Loretta observed, reviewing the final draft. You realize they'll likely countersue. I'm counting on it, Wade replied. Discovery works both ways. Judge Kessler, reviewing the letter as a courtesy, raised an eyebrow. This isn't just about the commercial anymore, is it? It was never just about the commercial, Wade acknowledged. It's about accountability. As they prepared to send the letter, Wade received intelligence from Dom that Belle and Max had secured a development deal for their reality show and were planning an engagement announcement to coincide with the show's press release. Strategic timing has always been my strength, Wade noted, instructing Loretta to hold the letter. Let's wait until they've fully committed to their new venture. Chapter 6. Counteroffensive. Belle was no fool. Despite her cultivated image of a carefree lifestyle influencer, she had built a successful brand through calculated business decisions and keen observation. She noticed Wade's meetings with Trent Collins and the ex-husbands of Max's former clients. When Amara became suddenly unavailable for lunches, Belle connected the dots. "He's planning something," she told Max as they lounged by the rooftop pool of their building. "Wade doesn't lose gracefully. Let him try." Max dismissed her concerns, scrolling through potential venues for their engagement party. "The commercial is protected speech. Besides, what judge in Boston would rule against me for a man who represented himself in his divorce? Arrogance is Wade's fatal flaw." Belle wasn't convinced. "You don't know him like I do. He's most dangerous when he's quiet." Acting on her instincts, Belle began her own intelligence gathering. She cultivated a friendship with a paralegal at Wade's firm, ostensibly seeking advice for a follower going through divorce. Through casual conversations, she learned Wade had been consulting with media litigation specialists. "We need to get ahead of this," Belle insisted to Max preemptive action. Max reluctantly agreed, and they launched a subtle counteroffensive. Belle started posting obliquely about controlling men who can't let go and the fragility of the male ego when rejected. Without naming Wade directly, the implications were clear to her audience. Meanwhile, Max assigned his firm's investigator to dig into Wade's background and current activities. The most promising angle emerged around Wade's friendship with Dom Santiago. "Your ex's best friend has an interesting history," Max informed Belle, reviewing the investigator's report. "Multiple investigations for hacking, one arrest that mysteriously disappeared from records. Charges dropped by the prosecutor right after Wade joined their case." "Wade represented him?" Belle asked. "And has maintained close association since." Max smiled. "Makes you wonder what kind of illegal surveillance your ex might be conducting through his criminal friend." Belle seized the opportunity, crafting a series of stories about feeling watched during her marriage and fearing her devices had been compromised. She never accused Wade directly, but left breadcrumbs for her followers to follow to their own conclusions. Max escalated by filing a harassment complaint against Wade for contacting his former clients, claiming it constituted interference with his practice. Though the complaint had little legal merit, it generated buzz in legal circles and created a perception that Wade was on a vengeful crusade. The counterattack appeared to be working. Wade canceled 2 court appearances, citing scheduling conflicts. Legal blogs noted he seemed distracted during a routine hearing. When spotted in public, he appeared disheveled, a sharp contrast to his normally immaculate presentation. Belle and Max grew confident enough to announce their engagement with an elaborate photo shoot for a lifestyle magazine. The accompanying interview included carefully worded references to healing from past relationship trauma and finding love, when least expected, with the person who helped me discover my worth. Their reality show development accelerated, with producers excited by the growing public interest in their relationship. The working title changed from Fresh Starts to Love After Freedom, positioning Belle and Max as both romantic leads and crusaders helping others escape unhappy marriages. To further capitalize on their momentum, Belle began featuring several wedding gifts in her social media posts, including a rare first-edition book Wade's mentor had given him and family heirlooms from Wade's deceased parents that held enormous sentimental value. "Isn't that crossing a line?" Amara asked when she visited Belle under the pretense of reconciliation. "They're my property according to the settlement," Belle shrugged. "Besides, they make great props for the aesthetic." Max, emboldened by their apparent victory, attempted to poach one of Wade's most significant clients, a tech innovator Wade had represented for years. He arranged a coincidental meeting at an industry event and subtly implied that Wade's recent behavior suggested emotional instability. "I've known Wade Blackwood for years," the client later told Wade directly. "Max Harrington suggested you might be struggling. Said I might want alternative representation before your issues affected my cases." Wade thanked the client for his loyalty and made a note of the interaction. As Belle and Max prepared to sign final contracts for their reality show, Wade appeared to be spiraling. He missed a deadline for filing an important brief. Photos emerged of him at a bar during work hours. Rumors circulated that his firm's partners were considering intervention. "We've won," Max declared the night before their contract signing. "Your ex has self-destructed exactly as predicted." Belle wasn't convinced. "It's too convenient. Wade doesn't break, not publicly." "You worry too much." Max dismissed her concerns, pouring champagne to celebrate. "By this time tomorrow, we'll have a 7-figure development deal, and Wade Blackwood will be yesterday's news." That night, Dom texted Wade from outside Belle and Max's building where he had been monitoring their activities. "Everything is in place." Wade, sitting in his immaculately organized apartment surrounded by case files, evidence binders, and social media printouts, all meticulously cataloged and annotated, replied simply, "Send it tomorrow. 9 a.m. sharp." Chapter 7. The Letter. At precisely 9 a.m., a courier requiring signature confirmation delivered identical manila envelopes to 3 locations simultaneously: Max's law office, Belle's content studio, and the production company developing their reality show. Max was in mid-consultation with a potential client when his assistant interrupted with wide eyes. "Sir, you need to see this immediately." The envelope contained a cease and desist letter unlike any Max had encountered in 15 years of practice. Spanning 23 pages of densely documented legal violations, it systematically dismantled every aspect of their commercial, social media campaign, and planned reality show. The letter, printed on Loretta Blackstone's prestigious letterhead, opened with a dispassionate summary. This letter constitutes formal notice of legal action being initiated against Maxwell Harrington, Belinda Turner, Fresh Start Law, LLC, and Pinnacle Productions regarding the unauthorized and unlawful use of copyrighted materials, misappropriation of likeness, false light portrayal, defamation, breach of confidentiality agreements, tortious interference with business relationships, and violations of Massachusetts Bar Association ethical standards. What followed was a methodical evisceration of their legal position. Copyright infringement, documented with the original contract showing Trent Collins maintained co-ownership of all wedding footage with specific prohibitions against commercial use without all parties' consent. Detailed financial analysis of damages to Wade's practice, including affidavits from Brunswick Technologies and 3 other clients explicitly citing the commercial as their reason for withdrawing business. Evidence of manipulative editing that constituted false light portrayal, with side-by-side comparisons of the original footage and the commercial version, timestamp authenticated by the filmmaker. Sworn statements from former associates at Fresh Start Law regarding Max's pattern of narrative enhancement and client exploitation. Documentation of Belle's possession and public display of Wade's family heirlooms in violation of confidential provisions in their settlement agreement. Evidence of Max's direct attempts to poach Wade's clients through defamatory statements. Most devastatingly, the letter revealed that Wade had already filed formal complaints with the State Bar Association regarding Max's ethical violations, with supporting testimony from former clients and associates. The letter concluded with non-negotiable demands: immediate removal of all commercial content featuring wedding footage, public retraction and apology, return of specified personal items not covered by the divorce settlement, compensation for documented financial damages, binding agreement to cease all public commentary on Wade Blackwood. This is a bluff," Max stammered, but his firm's general counsel, Robert Yamada, who had been summoned to review the letter, looked grim. "If even half of these allegations can be substantiated, we're facing serious exposure," Robert warned. The bar complaint alone could trigger an ethics investigation. Across town, Belle received her copy while filming content for a skincare sponsor. Her hands shook as she read the detailed appendix listing every social media post that constituted potential defamation through implication. Her first call was to Max, who was uncharacteristically subdued. "Don't say anything to anyone," he instructed. "We need to coordinate our response." By noon, news of the legal action had leaked to legal blogs. The commercial, which had been generating significant business for Max's firm, suddenly became toxic as potential clients worried about being drawn into litigation. Bell's sponsor contacts began requesting clarification about the situation, with two explicitly asking to delay planned collaborations until the matter was resolved. The reality show producers were the first to blink. By 3 p.m., they had placed the development deal on indefinite hold pending resolution of the legal issues. "You assured us there would be no complications," the executive producer berated Max during a tense conference call. "Now we learn your entire premise may constitute ongoing defamation and copyright violation." Wade maintained complete public silence, neither confirming nor denying the legal action. This calculated restraint only intensified media speculation, with several legal commentators noting that the comprehensive nature of the cease and desist suggested months of meticulous preparation. "Blackwood has apparently been playing chess while Harrington was playing checkers," one legal blogger wrote. The timing, waiting until after they secured commercial deals dependent on the disputed content, suggests a strategic patience few attorneys could maintain after such public provocation. By evening, Max's office had received calls from 7 concerned clients requesting reassurance that their cases wouldn't be affected by the brewing legal storm. 3 had already requested their files be transferred to other attorneys. Bell's social media engagement had shifted dramatically, with followers questioning her version of events and expressing skepticism about her victim narrative. In desperation, Max called Wade directly. "This has gone far enough," Max began, attempting to sound authoritative despite the tremor in his voice. "We should discuss this reasonably, attorney to attorney." "I believe my position is clearly outlined in the letter," Wade replied calmly. "Look, we can pull the commercial," Max offered. "Maybe issue a clarification. But the reality show is a separate matter, and Bell's social media are equally problematic," Wade interrupted. "My terms are negotiable, Max." "You can't possibly expect full compliance with everything in that letter," Max protested. "It would be professional suicide." "An interesting choice of words," Wade observed, "considering you attempted to professionally execute me through that commercial. I'll see you in court." Chapter 8: Desperate Measures. Over the next week, Bell and Max's carefully constructed facade began crumbling. The network pulled the commercial after receiving a similar cease and desist. Bell lost her 2 largest sponsorships as brands distanced themselves from potential litigation. Max's client roster shrank daily as word spread through Boston's legal community. Their relationship, built during the exhilarating dismantling of Wade and Bell's marriage, began showing stress fractures under pressure. "You said he wouldn't fight back like this," Bell accused during a heated argument in their kitchen. "You said he was too proud to make a public scene. How was I supposed to know he'd been documenting everything for months?" Max shot back. "You're the one who lived with him for years." Their desperation mounted when they learned their reality show producers had not only suspended their project, but were considering a documentary about the legal battle itself, with Wade as the sympathetic subject. "We need leverage," Max insisted during a strategy session with his firm's crisis management team. "Something that gives us negotiating power." Bell's social media presence, usually curated to perfection, began showing signs of strain. Her posts became defensive, then erratic. When she impulsively shared a tearful story suggesting Wade had monitored her communications during their marriage, her engagement metrics plummeted as followers sensed desperation. Max hired private investigator Russell Parnell to dig deeper into Wade's past and current activities, hoping to uncover something, anything, they could use as counter-leverage. "Everyone has skeletons," Max assured Bell. "Wade Blackwood isn't the saint he pretends to be." 2 weeks into the investigation, Parnell reported back with frustrating news. "I've never seen someone this clean," he admitted in Max's office. "No affairs, no financial irregularities, not even a parking ticket in 5 years. His pro bono work is legitimate, his taxes immaculate." "What about the friend?" "Santiago," Max pressed. "That's your only potential angle," Parnell confirmed. Their friendship dates back to a hacking case where charges were dropped under unusual circumstances. But there's no evidence of current illegal activity, and Santiago now runs a legitimate security consultancy with government contracts. With legitimate options dwindling, Max proposed a desperate strategy, manufacturing evidence of emotional abuse during the marriage. "We need sympathetic press," Max argued. "If we can shift public perception back to seeing you as the victim and Wade as the controlling ex who can't let go, we regain leverage." Belle, increasingly concerned about her collapsing brand, reluctantly agreed. They carefully crafted a narrative about Wade's supposed controlling behavior, planning to release it through a sympathetic journalist who had previously covered domestic abuse cases. What they didn't know was that Wade had anticipated this move months earlier. During their marriage, Belle had confided to Amara and two other friends that she sometimes exaggerated relationship problems for social media engagement, creating artificial struggles her audience could relate to. Wade had obtained sworn affidavits from all three documenting these admissions. When the journalist contacted Wade's attorney for comment on Belle's allegations, Loretta provided these affidavits along with text messages from Belle to friends describing Wade as too nice and frustratingly perfect. The story was killed immediately. As their options narrowed, Belle attempted to reconcile with Amara, hoping to gain intelligence on Wade's strategy. During an uncomfortable lunch, Belle probed for information while pretending to seek friendship. "I'm worried about Wade," Belle said with manufactured concern. "This vendetta isn't like him. Has he said anything to you?" Amara's response was measured. "He hasn't said much, but I did notice something interesting at his new place." "What?" Belle leaned forward eagerly. "The only photo he still has of you two together is from the charity gala where you met," Amara said thoughtfully. "He told me it reminds him that people aren't always what they present themselves to be, that some lessons are worth the price paid for them." The information wasn't useful leverage, but it unsettled Belle deeply. Max's professional situation deteriorated further when he discovered his firm's financial records had been subpoenaed as part of the expanded Barr investigation. The inquiry now included questions about client fund management and potential fee-splitting arrangements with non-lawyers, a serious ethical violation. The stress culminated in a public argument at Sorellina, an upscale Italian restaurant where Belle and Max were dining with potential investors for a new venture. Their heated exchange about strategy devolved into personal accusations, with Belle blaming Max for legal advice that had exposed her to liability and Max accusing Belle of withholding crucial information about her marriage. A diner at a nearby table recorded the argument, which quickly went viral, adding another humiliation to their mounting troubles. In a final desperate move, Belle reached out directly to Wade with a thinly veiled threat. "I still have the journals your mother kept," she texted late one night. "The ones about your father's depression. I'm considering using them for a piece on mental health stigma, unless you'd prefer to discuss more reasonable terms." The response came immediately. "That would be inadvisable." Belle smirked, believing she'd finally found leverage. What she didn't know was that Wade was already on the phone with Dom. "She's escalated to threatening my family's memory," Wade said quietly. "Activate the final phase." Chapter 9. Reckoning. The lawsuit filed by Wade Blackwood against Belle Turner, Maxwell Harrington, Fresh Start Law LLC, and associated parties became known in legal circles simply as The Reckoning. At 342 pages, the meticulously documented complaint established new standards for thoroughness in personal litigation. Unlike the cease and desist letter, which had been privately delivered, the lawsuit was filed publicly with the court, making all allegations matter of public record. Media coverage was immediate and extensive, with legal experts expressing astonishment at both the comprehensive nature of the claims and the substantial evidence supporting them. "This isn't a lawsuit. It's a legal carpet bombing," commented legal analyst Sophia Martinez on a national morning show. "Blackwood has documented every statement, every post, every business decision with forensic precision. More importantly, he's established a pattern of calculated exploitation that transforms this from a private dispute into a matter of professional ethics." The calculated damage to Belle and Max was threefold: legal, professional, and public. Legally, they face claims totaling over $7 million in damages, plus potential punitive awards. Max's firm's malpractice insurance declined coverage, citing exclusions for intentional acts and noting that the commercial and related activities were business marketing decisions rather than protected legal practice. Professionally, the Massachusetts Bar Association accelerated its investigation into Max's practices. 3 former clients came forward with similar stories of relationship development during active representation, raising serious questions about Max's ethical conduct. His firm began hemorrhaging associates as the controversy intensified. Bell's carefully constructed social media empire imploded as the lawsuit revealed her systematic manipulation of engagement metrics to secure sponsorships. An analysis by a digital forensics expert documented how Bell had purchased followers, comments, and engagement, information that sent her remaining sponsors fleeing. Most devastating was Wade's establishment of the Clarity Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping victims of predatory divorce practices and social media exploitation. With Judge Kessler as chairman and several of Max's former clients on the board, the foundation immediately established credibility within both legal and advocacy communities. The foundation's first public service campaign featured testimonials from individuals who had been pressured to exaggerate claims during divorce proceedings or who had suffered from manipulated portrayals on social media. While neither Bell nor Max was mentioned directly, the parallels were unmistakable. Bell and Max's relationship, already strained, collapsed completely under the pressure. Their public argument at Sorellina had been merely the prelude to a bitter private dissolution. "You used me to get back at him," Bell accused during their final confrontation in their once showcased apartment, now cluttered with packed boxes. "You saw me as just another marketing opportunity." That's rich coming from someone who turned her entire life, including our relationship, into content. Max fired back. "Did you ever actually care about anyone besides yourself and your precious follower count?" Bell moved out the next day, retreating to a modest sublet as her financial prospects dwindled. Her attempts to rebrand as an authentic influencer focusing on rebuilding after controversy gained little traction as the lawsuit revelations continued to dominate her online presence. Max faced an even steeper fall. The Bar Association's investigation uncovered irregularities in his client trust accounts, leading to an emergency suspension of his license pending full proceedings. Fresh Start Law collapsed as clients and attorneys departed en masse, leaving Max with mounting debts and legal bills. When the court ruled on Wade's motion for preliminary injunction, the decision was decisive. Immediate cessation of all use of the wedding footage, removal of all social media content identified in the complaint, and return of Wade's family heirlooms. More significantly, the court's strongly worded opinion suggested high likelihood of success on the merits of the overall case. Throughout the proceedings, Wade maintained professional composure, declining all interview requests and issuing only a single statement through his foundation. The legal profession is built on trust between attorney and client, between parties to a contract, and between the public and the justice system itself. When that trust is violated for personal gain or commercial advantage, the damage extends beyond individuals to the foundation of our legal system. This case is not about personal vindication, but about upholding the principles that make fair resolution of disputes possible. The statement was widely quoted in legal publications and even incorporated into ethics training materials at 2 law schools. 3 months after filing the lawsuit, Wade accepted a settlement offer that included a substantial financial payment, permanent restrictions on Bell and Max's public statements, and dissolution of all commercial enterprises built around their relationship narrative. The final blow came when evidence emerged that Max had systematically targeted divorcing spouses in vulnerable positions, developing romantic relationships with them while still representing their legal interests, a clear ethical violation that resulted in disbarment proceedings. Bell, her influencer career in ruins, eventually returned to her hometown in Wisconsin, where she took a marketing position at a local real estate company. Her social media accounts, once showcasing a life of luxury and aspiration, went dormant. Max, disbarred and deeply in debt, found work as a paralegal at a strip mall legal clinic specializing in traffic violations. 1 year after the commercial first aired, Wade sat with Judge Kessler on the judge's back porch, watching the sunset over the harbor. "Was it worth it?" Kessler asked quietly. "All that effort, all that time?" Wade considered the question carefully. It wasn't about revenge. No. The judge raised a skeptical eyebrow. "It was about consequences," Wade clarified. "They weaponized the most meaningful day of my life to further their careers and hurt me professionally. They needed to understand that actions have proportional repercussions." And the foundation? Was that part of the punishment too? Wade shook his head. "That's the legacy. Bell and Max aren't the only ones who manipulate vulnerable people during divorce or exploit private lives for profit. Someone needed to establish consequences." Judge Kessler studied Wade's profile in the fading light. "You know what makes you different from them? They sought to benefit regardless of who got hurt. You sought justice even when it brought you no personal advantage." "Maybe," Wade acknowledged. "Or maybe I'm just better at playing the long game." They sat in companionable silence as darkness fell over the water. Wade had recently begun dating Veronica Wu, their professional respect having evolved into something deeper during the litigation. His practice was thriving, with clients specifically seeking his expertise in protecting intellectual property and personal reputation in the digital age. The Clarity Foundation had secured major funding and was already helping dozens of individuals navigate predatory practices in both legal and social media contexts. Wade served as its chief legal advisor, finding unexpected fulfillment in helping others avoid the exploitation he had experienced. The wedding video that had been so callously exploited now resided in a secured digital vault, accessed only once. When Wade had reviewed it privately after the case concluded, allowing himself to finally process the grief of what had been lost and acknowledge the strength he had found in responding to betrayal not with bitter vengeance, but with principled justice. In the end, the cease and desist letter that had devastated Bell and Max's careers had become known in legal education as the Blackwood Standard, a template for how to comprehensively address multifaceted legal violations with devastating effectiveness. What had begun as a personal injury had transformed into a professional legacy that would long outlast the pain that inspired it. Epilogue. 15 years later. The Blackwood Legacy. The snow fell in thick flakes outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Harvard Law School auditorium, creating a peaceful backdrop to the standing room-only crowd inside. Professor Wade Blackwood stood at the podium, his once dark hair now distinguished with streaks of silver at the temples, surveying the assembled third-year students with quiet confidence. "The most important lesson I can impart about intellectual property litigation isn't found in case law," Wade said, his voice carrying through the hall without need for amplification. "It's understanding that behind every IP dispute lies a human story, often one of betrayal, exploitation, or misunderstanding. Your job isn't just to win the case. It's to restore justice to that story." At 50, Wade Blackwood had become one of Harvard Law's most sought-after adjunct professors, teaching a specialized course on digital rights and reputation in the modern age. His lecture series consistently had a wait list 3 times its capacity, drawing students from across the university's graduate programs. The quarterly guest lecture had become tradition, current law students dissecting the Blackwood Standard, the cease and desist letter that had not only devastated his ex-wife's social media empire and her lover's law practice 15 years ago, but had revolutionized how intellectual property disputes were approached in the digital age. "Professor Blackwood, is it true the case is now taught at 37 law schools nationwide?" a student asked during the Q&A session. Wade nodded modestly. 39 as of last semester. Though I believe Columbia uses it as an example of excessive litigation, so perhaps we shouldn't count that one. The audience laughed appreciatively. Another student raised her hand. "Sir, what's your response to critics who say the Blackwood Standard encourages disproportionate legal responses to personal disputes?" Wade considered the question carefully, as he always did. Proportionality is subjective. What's excessive to one person may be wholly inadequate to another. The standard isn't about punishing offenders. It's about establishing comprehensive accountability for actions that have multifaceted consequences. When someone deliberately harms another's reputation, livelihood, and personal dignity simultaneously, the response must address each dimension of that harm. After the lecture, Wade gathered his materials as students filed out, many lingering to capture a final nugget of wisdom. Supreme Judicial Court Justice Howard Kessler waited patiently in the wings, his once silver hair now snow white, but his eyes still sharp at 85. "You never mention her name," Justice Kessler observed as they walked together toward the faculty lounge. "Not once in all these years of lectures." "This was never about Bell," Wade replied simply. "Or Max. It was about establishing boundaries that protect people from exploitation. Personalizing it diminishes the principle." Justice Kessler smiled knowingly. And yet the principle exists because it was personal first. In the faculty lounge, they were greeted warmly by Massachusetts Attorney General Veronica Wu Blackwood, who had arrived early for their dinner reservation at Harvest. At 52, Veronica projected the same fierce competence that had first attracted Wade years ago, now amplified by the gravitas of her office. "How were the vultures today?" she asked with a fond smile, kissing her husband of 12 years. "Hungry for wisdom, as always," Wade replied, though increasingly interested in the sensational aspects. "One asked if I'd consider consulting for a limited series about the case." "Hollywood does love a good revenge story," Justice Kessler chuckled, "though they'd probably cast someone much less balanced than you, Wade." "That's precisely why I continue declining," Wade responded, helping Veronica with her coat. "The narrative would inevitably center on vengeance rather than accountability. That's not the legacy I want for the foundation." The Clarity Foundation, originally established in the aftermath of Wade's lawsuit, had evolved from a modest nonprofit into a powerful advocacy organization with offices in 12 cities. Under Wade's guidance, as chairman emeritus, he had stepped back from day-to-day operations 5 years prior. The foundation had helped secure legislative reforms in 17 states, establishing stricter ethical guidelines for divorce proceedings and enhanced protections against digital exploitation. As they walked through Harvard Square toward the restaurant, Wade reflected on how thoroughly his life had transformed since that devastating moment when he'd first seen the commercial featuring his manipulated wedding footage. The pain had long since faded, replaced by a deep satisfaction in the structures of accountability he'd helped establish. His law practice had evolved into a boutique firm specializing in digital rights, with 8 carefully selected associates and a 2-year waitlist for new clients. Appointed to the American Bar Association's Ethics Committee 4 years earlier, Wade had helped draft updated standards for attorney conduct in the age of social media. Standards that explicitly prohibited the kinds of exploitation that Maxwell Harrington had once practiced. At Harvest, as they settled into their regular corner table, Justice Kessler raised his glass in a toast. "To legacy," he said meaningfully. Wade and Veronica joined the toast, their wedding bands, simple platinum with matching inscriptions reading "Truth Endures," catching the candlelight. Speaking of legacy, Veronica segued, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Naomi called this afternoon. The adoption paperwork is advancing. We may be grandparents by summer." Wade's expression softened. Their daughter Naomi, named after the brave former associate of Max Harrington who had testified against her boss, had been adopted by Wade and Veronica from foster care at age 10. Now 22 and in her first year of medical school, she and her husband were working to adopt a sibling group from the same foster system that had once housed Naomi. "Life has a poetry to it," Justice Kessler observed. "From exploitation to advocacy, from loss to family. Full circle." Wade nodded thoughtfully. "Not a circle, a spiral. We return to similar points, but at different elevations." Later that night, in their Cambridge home, a Victorian they had restored together, blending Wade's appreciation for historical detail with Veronica's modern sensibilities, Wade sat in his study reviewing applications for the Foundation Scholarship Program. His phone buzzed with a text from Dom. "Caught an interesting reference to our old friends. Call when you can." Wade smiled slightly. Dominic Santiago had leveraged his security expertise into a thriving international consultancy, working with governments and major corporations on cybersecurity protocols. Though his methods occasionally skirted legal boundaries, Dom's fundamental ethical code remained uncompromised. He had never lost his protective instinct toward Wade, maintaining passive monitoring for any mentions of Belle Turner or Maxwell Harrington that might indicate trouble. Wade called him immediately. "So guess who's trying to make a comeback?" Dom's voice held its familiar mischievous edge despite the years. "I assume you're about to tell me," Wade replied dryly. "Our friend Max appears in a podcast about professional redemption. Very contrite, very humble. Claims he's a changed man after his difficult but deserved fall from grace." Wade felt a flicker of curiosity, but no anxiety. "Is he mentioning names?" "Careful not to, but the subtext is clear to anyone familiar with the case. He's positioning himself as a consultant on legal ethics now, if you can appreciate the irony." Wade considered this information. "Is he causing any actual harm?" "Not that I can detect. Just trying to rebuild some semblance of relevance. The podcast has minimal listenership." "Then we let it be," Wade decided. Everyone deserves a chance at reinvention. After ending the call, Wade found himself reflecting on Maxwell Harrington's journey. Following disbarment, Max had disappeared from public view for years. Occasional intelligence from Dom had tracked him through a series of increasingly desperate attempts to leverage his legal knowledge. Ghostwriting for legitimate attorneys, consulting under pseudonyms, even a brief stint teaching paralegal courses at a community college before his background was discovered. Wade felt neither satisfaction nor resentment at Max's struggles. The consequences had been proportionate to the actions, no more, no less. If Max had found a path to genuine redemption, Wade harbored no desire to obstruct it. Belle's trajectory had been markedly different. After her initial retreat to Wisconsin, she had gradually rebuilt a modest online presence focused on authentic living and recovering from public shame. Unlike Max, she had never attempted to deny responsibility for her actions, instead incorporating them into a narrative of personal growth. 5 years after the lawsuit, Belle had published a memoir titled Filtered, My Journey from Influence to Authenticity, which had achieved modest sales and included a carefully worded acknowledgement of the harm her actions had caused. Wade had received a copy with a simple handwritten note, "I'm sorry. I hope you found peace." He hadn't responded, but had donated the book to the Foundation's research library. According to Dom's occasional updates, Belle had eventually married a high school teacher in her hometown, had 2 children, and built a small but sustainable business offering marketing consultancy to local businesses. She maintained a low-profile social media presence, focused primarily on family and community rather than personal brand building. Wade harbored no ill will toward her. The lesson had been learned, the boundaries established. What more could justice require? As he prepared for bed, Veronica joined him, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Dom's update got you thinking about the past." Wade smiled. After 12 years of marriage, Veronica could read him effortlessly, just reflecting on how thoroughly life transforms us all. "For better or worse," she agreed, resting her head against his shoulder. "Though I prefer our better to their worse." It was never about better or worse, Wade clarified. Only about truth and consequences. Veronica laughed softly. "That's what makes you extraordinary, Wade Blackwood. Most people want revenge. You only ever wanted accountability." As they settled in a bed, Wade's thoughts drifted to tomorrow's schedule. A morning meeting with the Foundation's executive director, afternoon appointments with clients, dinner with Amara Okafor and her husband to discuss expanding the Foundation's youth mentorship program. Amara had remained a steadfast friend through the years, eventually joining the Foundation's board and spearheading its educational initiatives. Her unwavering loyalty during Wade's darkest hours had formed the foundation for a lifelong friendship that extended to their families. Just before sleep claimed him, Wade reflected that the most profound victory had not been the lawsuit or even the lasting impact of the Blackwood Standard, but the family he had built from the ashes of betrayal. Not just Veronica and Naomi, but the extended circle of loyal friends and colleagues who shared his commitment to truth and accountability. Parallel lives. The Fresh Start Legal Clinic occupied a small storefront wedged between a discount mattress outlet and a vape shop in suburban Phoenix. Inside, Maxwell Harrington, now sporting a closely trimmed gray beard that partially concealed his receding hairline, sat across from a nervous young woman reviewing her divorce paperwork. "Remember, Mrs. Jimenez, full disclosure is mandatory," Max advised, his tone professional but warm. "Hiding assets always backfires. Trust me on this." At 53, Maxwell Harrington bore little resemblance to the flamboyant divorce attorney whose face had once adorned billboards across Boston. The designer suits had been replaced by modest business casual attire. The perfect smile, now tempered by years of humility, forcibly learned. After his disbarment 15 years earlier, Max had initially clung to denial, blaming Wade Blackwood, Bell, the Bar Association, anyone but himself, for his downfall. The first 5 years had been a spiral of failed ventures, borrowed money, an increasingly desperate attempt to leverage his legal knowledge without crossing into unauthorized practice of law. The turning point had come during a particularly bleak period when, facing eviction from his studio apartment, Max had taken a job at a call center for a legal services hotline. There, anonymously guiding callers through basic legal questions, he had rediscovered something long buried beneath his ambition: genuine satisfaction in helping people navigate confusing legal terrain. Over subsequent years, Max had rebuilt a modest life around this rediscovered purpose. After completing paralegal certification and fulfilling thousands of community service hours, he had established the Fresh Start Legal Clinic, offering low-cost assistance to individuals representing themselves in family court matters. Operating under the supervision of licensed attorneys, as required by a settlement with the Bar Association, Max had found unexpected fulfillment in guiding clients through paperwork, court procedures, and realistic expectations. His past mistakes, openly acknowledged in the clinic's promotional materials, had become cautionary lessons he shared with clients tempted toward vengeful litigation. As Mrs. Jimenez departed with her completed paperwork, Max's assistant Luisa entered with his afternoon coffee. "The Jimenez case is straightforward," he told her, reviewing his notes. "But schedule extra time for her return visit. She'll need emotional support as much as procedural guidance." "Already done," Luisa confirmed. "Also, that podcast producer called again. They want to schedule the follow-up interview." Max hesitated. His recent appearance on Fallen, Stories of Professional Redemption, had generated mixed feelings. While he believed in the value of his cautionary tale, he remained acutely conscious of the damage his past actions had caused. "Tell them I'll consider it," he decided, "but make it clear I won't discuss specific individuals." After Luisa left, Max opened his desk drawer and removed a well-worn newspaper clipping, a 15-year-old article about the Massachusetts Bar Association's decision to disbar him. He kept it as a reminder, not of resentment, but of accountability. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife, "Teresa, don't forget to pick up Miguel after basketball practice. Love you." Max smiled, texting back confirmation. His marriage to Teresa, a high school Spanish teacher he'd met at a community college where he briefly taught paralegal courses, had provided stability he'd never known in his previous life. Their son Miguel, now 13, knew his father only as the dedicated paralegal who helped people navigate legal difficulties, not as the disgraced attorney who had once exploited vulnerable clients. As he prepared for his next appointment, Max reflected on the strange path his life had taken. The ambitious attorney who had once seen Bell Turner as both conquest and marketing opportunity would never have imagined finding contentment in a modest legal clinic helping ordinary people with routine legal matters. He had attempted to contact Wade Blackwood once, 7 years earlier, sending a carefully worded letter acknowledging the legitimacy of Wade's actions and expressing genuine remorse. The letter had been returned unopened, not rejected in anger, but simply marked "receipt acknowledged," no response required. Max had understood the message perfectly. Wade Blackwood had moved on completely, neither harboring resentment nor seeking reconciliation. The past was closed, justice had been served, and further communication served no purpose. In his more reflective moments, Max recognized that Wade's comprehensive response to his destructive actions had ultimately saved him from himself. The man he had become, humbler, more authentic, genuinely committed to helping others, would never have emerged without the complete dismantling of his former self. Mr. Harrington? Louisa interrupted his thoughts. Your 3 o'clock is here. Custody modification case. Max nodded, tucking the newspaper clipping back into his drawer. Send them in. 2,000 miles away in Green Bay, Wisconsin, Belle Thompson, formerly Turner, formerly Blackwood, adjusted the lighting in her small studio as she prepared to record a video segment for her online course, Authentic Marketing for Small Businesses. At 48, Belle retained much of the beauty that had once built her influencer empire, though her styling was now deliberately understated. Minimal makeup, simple hairstyle, clothing chosen for comfort rather than statement. The carefully curated aesthetic that had once defined Belle's world had been replaced by genuine warmth and hard-earned wisdom. Remember, she spoke directly to the camera, social media isn't about projecting perfection. It's about connecting authentically with your community. Your small business doesn't need a fabricated story. Its real value is far more compelling than any fiction you could create. The irony wasn't lost on Belle. 15 years ago, her carefully constructed online persona had collapsed under the weight of its own fabrications, exposed through Wade's methodical legal action. The influencer who had once manipulated metrics, relationships, and narratives for engagement now advocated relentlessly for authenticity. After finishing the recording, Belle checked her phone to find a message from her husband, Drew. Parent-teacher conference is running late. Need me to ask Mom to pick up the kids? Belle replied quickly, confirming that she'd handle pickup. Her relationship with Drew Thompson, who taught history at the local high school, had developed gradually after her return to Green Bay. Unlike her marriages to Wade and her brief, disastrous relationship with Max, her connection with Drew was built on complete transparency, including her painful past. Their twins, now 10, knew a simplified version of their mother's previous life. As they grew older, Belle intended to share more details, viewing her mistakes as important cautionary lessons about integrity and consequences. Outside her small studio, converted from a former retail space downtown, Belle spotted a familiar name on her appointment calendar. Trent Collins, the documentary filmmaker who had shot her wedding to Wade all those years ago. Trent had reached out unexpectedly the previous month, explaining he was working on a documentary about social media ethics and wanted to interview her about her perspective on authenticity in the digital age. After careful consideration, Belle had agreed, with clear boundaries about what she would discuss. As she prepared for his arrival, Belle reflected on how thoroughly her understanding of influence had transformed. The woman who had once viewed followers as commodities now measured success by the concrete help she provided to local businesses struggling to establish genuine digital connections. Her modest consulting practice served primarily small businesses within a 50-mile radius, family restaurants, independent bookstores, local craftspeople. Her fees were reasonable, her advice practical, and her approach resolutely ethical. When potential clients sought shortcuts or manipulative strategies, Belle declined their business, regardless of the potential income. The wisdom had been expensively purchased. Following the lawsuit, Belle had experienced 3 years of profound depression, her identity shattered along with her income stream. The careful reconstruction of her life, beginning with therapy, continuing through community college marketing courses, and culminating in her current business, had required humility she'd never imagined possessing. The memoir she'd published during this reconstruction had been less about profit than atonement, a public acknowledgement of her destructive choices and their consequences. Though some critics had dismissed it as reputation rehabilitation, Belle had found the process of honest self-examination transformative. When Trent arrived for the interview, Belle greeted him warmly, but professionally. Now in his late 50s with a distinguished career documenting digital ethics issues, Trent had evolved from wedding videographer to respected documentarian. Before we start, Belle said as they settled in her small conference room, I want to be clear about my boundaries. I won't discuss Wade personally. Any reference to our marriage or divorce needs to focus on my actions and their consequences, not on him. Trent nodded, unsurprised. That's entirely appropriate. This isn't about personalities. It's about the evolution of digital ethics. Your perspective, as someone who's experienced both sides of that evolution, is valuable. During the interview, Bell spoke candidly about her journey from exploitation to advocacy. I used relationships as content without considering the human cost, she explained. I viewed my marriage as material rather than a sacred trust. When that approach destroyed everything I'd built, I had to fundamentally reassess what influence actually means. After the interview concluded, Trent lingered briefly. I saw Wade last month at Harvard. He's teaching a course on digital rights. Bell nodded, a complex emotion crossing her features. That makes perfect sense. He always understood the power of information better than most. He doesn't mention you by name in his lectures, Trent noted. Ever. Not out of bitterness. It seems more like principle. That sounds like Wade, Bell acknowledged. For him, it was never personal. It was about establishing boundaries that should never be crossed. She hesitated before asking, "Is he happy?" "He seems fulfilled," Trent replied carefully. "His work with the Clarity Foundation has helped thousands of people." Bell smiled slightly. "Good. That matters more than happiness, I think." As Trent departed, Bell checked her schedule for the remainder of the day, picking up the twins from school, dinner preparation, then an evening municipal meeting where she would present her proposal for digital literacy programs in local schools. The life she had rebuilt bore no resemblance to the glamorous existence she had once projected online. Her home was modest, her wardrobe practical, her savings adequate rather than extravagant. Yet the relationships she had formed with Drew, their children, the local community, possessed an authenticity that her previous life had lacked entirely. In her office hung a single reminder of her past, a framed page from Wade's lawsuit listing the specific falsehoods she had propagated, not displayed out of masochism, but as a daily reminder that integrity, once compromised, requires constant vigilance to maintain. As she gathered her things to leave, Bell reflected that perhaps the most important lesson from her spectacular downfall was the recognition that true influence wasn't measured in followers or engagement metrics, but in positive impact on actual lives. By that measure, her current modest existence contained more genuine success than her previous apparent triumph. Convergence. The Clarity Foundation's 15th anniversary gala filled the grand ballroom of Boston's Fairmont Copley Plaza. Distinguished guests from legal, academic, and advocacy communities mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, celebrating an organization that had transformed from one man's response to personal injustice into a national force for accountability in digital spaces. Wade moved through the crowd with practiced ease, greeting Foundation supporters, former clients, and the expanding network of attorneys who had adopted the Blackwood standard in their practice. At his side, Veronica engaged effortlessly with judges, legislators, and potential donors. "There's someone I think you should meet," Judge Kessler said, approaching them midway through the evening. "He's been doing remarkable work with self-represented litigants in Arizona. Very much aligned with our mission." Wade nodded, following Judge Kessler through the crowd before stopping abruptly as he recognized the man standing near the Foundation's historical display. Maxwell Harrington had aged considerably in the 15 years since their last encounter. His once flamboyant style had been replaced by modest formality, his previously perfect smile now more restrained. Most strikingly, his eyes had lost the calculating glint Wade remembered, replaced by something resembling genuine humility. Max spotted them simultaneously, his expression registering surprise, followed by resigned acceptance. He had been invited to the gala by the Foundation's executive director based on his clinic's work, unaware that Wade would be present. "I should go," Max said quietly to Judge Kessler. "My presence is inappropriate." On the contrary, Wade found himself saying, "The Foundation exists precisely because of the lessons learned from our shared history." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them until Veronica stepped forward. "I understand your clinic in Phoenix has developed an innovative approach to helping domestic violence survivors navigate restraining orders." "Grateful for the professional opening," Max nodded. We've created simplified documentation that increases completion rates by about 40%. We'd be happy to share our materials with the Foundation. The conversation that followed remained strictly professional, focused entirely on the work rather than the past. As they spoke, Wade observed the fundamental transformation in his former adversary, not just in appearance or circumstances, but an underlying purpose. When they eventually parted ways, Max extended his hand tentatively. "What you built here matters," he said simply. "It's helping people I never considered when I was practicing law." Wade accepted the handshake briefly. That's its purpose. Later, as Wade delivered his keynote address, he surveyed the room filled with advocates who had embraced the Foundation's mission of protecting vulnerable individuals from exploitation. 15 years ago, the Clarity Foundation emerged from a personal experience with manipulation and misrepresentation, Wade acknowledged. But its enduring value comes not from that origin story, but from the thousands of individuals who have since found protection through our advocacy. He continued, speaking about the Foundation's expanding work in digital rights education, ethical guidelines for professional conduct, and legislative initiatives for greater transparency in both legal and media contexts. "The greatest measure of our success," Wade concluded, "is not the cases we've won or the policies we've changed, but the exploitation that never occurs because boundaries are now clearly established and consequences widely understood." As applause filled the ballroom, Wade felt a profound sense of completion. The damage inflicted 15 years earlier had been transformed into protection for countless others. The personal injury had yielded universal principle. The individual crisis had created systemic change. After the gala, as Wade and Veronica returned home, he found himself unusually reflective. "Seeing Max tonight," he admitted, "I realized something important. The letter we sent 15 years ago wasn't really about punishment. It was about establishing that actions have proportional consequences." "And has that been accomplished?" Veronica asked. Wade considered the question carefully. Max lost the career he corrupted, but found more honest work helping others. Belle lost the platform she exploited, but built a more authentic life. "I lost a marriage based on illusion, but gained a family grounded in truth." He smiled at his wife. "Yes, I'd say the proportions worked out remarkably well." As they prepared for bed, Wade's phone buzzed with a news alert. The Massachusetts legislature had just passed the Digital Integrity Act, legislation the Foundation had advocated for over 3 years, establishing enhanced protections against misrepresentation and exploitation in digital spaces. "Another boundary secured," Veronica noted, reading over his shoulder. "Another story protected," Wade corrected gently. In that moment, 15 years after the devastating commercial that had weaponized his wedding day, Wade Blackwood recognized the ultimate justice in his response. Not the downfall of those who had wronged him, but the creation of protections ensuring others wouldn't suffer similar exploitation. The Blackwood Standard had transcended its origins as a cease and desist letter to become a framework for accountability in digital spaces, a legacy far more meaningful than any personal vindication could have provided. As he drifted toward sleep, Wade reflected that perhaps the most profound revenge against exploitation wasn't destruction, but creation, building structures of accountability that rendered such exploitation increasingly difficult to perpetrate and impossible to sustain. In that understanding lay the final piece with his past and the enduring purpose for his future. The cease and desist letter had ended one chapter, but the principles it embodied continued writing a far more significant story. One of boundaries respected, consequences acknowledged, and dignity preserved in an age where all were increasingly vulnerable to exploitation. The ultimate victory wasn't that Belle and Max had fallen, but that so many others would never need to fall at all. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.